Right, Rachel, welcome.
Thank you.
Q&A time today. I'm pumped with this because first one, I'm going to answer one now, right now, or you're going to answer it. April, if banks don't pass on the rate cut, what are their reasons not to?
Well, April, I would say this time I think all of them have passed on the rate cut, but their reasons not to might be their own personal appetite. So if there was one bank that didn't pass it on, I think last rate cut there was one, they might not be wanting to grow their business, but the vast majority of them did. So
yeah, I saw that they got named and shamed
They
too
did.
this week, didn't they? There was a list of them that didn't pass it on, or one at least, as you mentioned. So yeah, it's weird though, isn't it, that they're not going to, because it just really is a game changer.
Yeah, I think some people get a bit confused though sometimes, and they think their bank haven't passed on the 0.25, but it's actually because their repayment hasn't reduced. So the rate if you're with any of the sort of major banks or all of those lenders that passed on the rate cut, they've all passed it on. It's just about whether they reduced your repayment or whether they're actually encouraging you to make some extra repayments and you need to call the bank to reduce your repayments.
Yeah, got you. So weird question that I probably know the answer to. Do they pass on a rate cut for a certain product within their team but not another, i.e., I'm passing it on for principal and interest but not interest only?
They can do that, and sometimes I know years ago there was a bit of a trend not to pass it on as much for the interest-only products, but not currently.
Interesting. Okay. All right, well, that's our first question for the day. Let's get into the show. Daniel says, is there ever a scenario where you can buy an investment property using equity from the family home without having to add extra money to it, or do you always need a cash deposit? And are there still properties available in this market that can fully fund themselves, including management fees? So two separate parts to this.
I'm going to take the first one of that.
You can take the first one of this. So what's the answer for Daniel?
Oh, the answer is yes. I would say the vast majority of people who have equity in their own home aren't using any cash when they're buying an investment property, or if they have cash kicking around that they want to contribute, they tend to put that into their own home and reduce the home loan. So if you've got equity, the two things, equity and income, you don't need any cash to buy a property.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's actually a no-brainer, isn't it? For the sophisticated investor.
Yeah.
Well, you're maybe not a sophisticated investor when you've bought your family home and that's all, but you're wanting to be an advanced investor that buys multiple properties, or even just one or two just to get ahead in life other than your super and cash, then equity is the way to go, in my mind.
Yeah, and sometimes we can be guilty of assuming that everybody knows that.
Yes.
And I think it's great to see a question like that and we go, well, of course, but you go, it's so amazing if you're asking that question. There's other people that also need to know that, and I want everyone to know that.
Yeah, totally. Oh, yeah. Look, it's the ninth wonder of the world, I think.
Yeah.
But also, and mortgage brokers, present company excluded, may also use the term of I'm getting a cash out. Right?
Yep.
You're getting a cash out amount for your next property.
Yeah.
So am I getting cash out or am I getting equity out? Well, you're getting equity out, but we're referring to it as cash. It can often confuse someone, can't it?
Yeah, it can.
So equity is a loan, people. Cash is your own hard-earned that you've already paid tax on. It's sitting there for you to use when you want it to, and you're not going to get charged interest on it. But also that good debt, bad debt relationship, right? The principal place of residence has bad debt attached to it because it's non-income producing and it's not tax deductible, versus the good debt that we go and buy an investment property, there's income attached to it and it's therefore tax deductible at the time of recording according to the ATO.
But so to answer your question, Daniel, no, you don't need any savings. But the second part of that question, over to you, John.
Well, isn't that a common question that we get in our office? Are still properties available in this market that can fully fund themselves, including management fees? So the answer to that is yes, but what, right? And does it suit your ultimate strategy? So an example of that might be, because we're talking, let's use 6% as an example of interest rate right now. And let's say that's interest only. And let's say you've put down a 10% cash deposit or a 20% cash deposit, right? In that example, it's not that hard to find properties that essentially wipe their own face. The income versus the expenses are net. However, back to Daniel's first part, we're using equity to buy the property. So we're borrowing 103, 104% of the purchase price. So now we've put an extra 20, 24% of loan into the equation, and we might want to pay principal and interest, I don't know, but we've now got running costs at a much higher rate.
Yeah.
So therefore it is harder to find that. In addition to that, I suppose we look at it and say, if I'm going to spend 600, 700, 800,000 to buy something that's a sizable product, as in location or type or quality of property, the rents probably need to be about $800, $900, $1,000 a week. That's where it gets tough. Daniel might be looking for something like that says, yeah, on these numbers, when I buy something, or if I buy something at 600,000, it only rents for $550 a week or $600 a week. I'm going to have a shortfall of $1,000 a month or something like that.
Yeah, and that's going to change substantially if rates were to reduce 1%.
Yeah, but even if I put cash in as a deposit, that changes substantially as well, doesn't it? Because I haven't paid cash for the stamp duty. I haven't paid cash for the deposit. I've used equity for all of that. That's a loan that I'm paying interest on, that 6% as well.
Yeah.
If I pull back to a 300, 400K purchase, now all of a sudden I'm starting to get more neutrally geared property. Okay. The question for a lot of people is, well, do I want to buy that cheap product?
Yeah.
Do I want that for my portfolio long term? Some people's answer is, yeah, that's fine. I'm cool with that because it means that I can still go out for dinner. My running costs are less.
Yeah, and if it fits your strategy.
Fits the strategy, yeah. And I think there's still good real estate out there at 300-400K, but it's just knowing what your situation's like.
Yeah, Sam asks, I know the general rule is not to sell an investment property, but how much growth would you consider selling at? E.g., bought for 270, held for 3 years, valued at 550, leaning towards waiting till Jan when home buyers grant opens up and may add some more competition to the market.
Yeah, if that first question was one of the common ones, this is a close second in our office. So the general rule is not to sell the property, right? We want, in an ideal world, we'd hold a portfolio, it would wipe its own face cash flow wise and live happily ever after and never have to sell, right? So I think there's a difference between wanting to sell and having to sell.
Yeah.
Have to sell means I'm running low on cash flow, I need to sell it, something's happening in my life that requires me to offload it. Wanting to sell is, okay, this property's had some growth and now I want to take the proceeds of that and maybe pay down all of my debt on my owner-occupier and go back to 2 days a week.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Never going to stop anyone from doing that.
Yeah.
But if we're selling it saying, well, this property cycle or market has already grown, I can't see it growing again, so I'm going to take it out and put it into another market that I think is going to grow better, we haven't got a crystal ball for that. We don't know that that's an actually guaranteed outcome, whereas the selling to pay off your debt, that's a guaranteed outcome.
I think knowing what you would do with the funds, what are you
Correct.
What are you going to do with those funds?
Absolutely. So, yeah, so Sam, I'd be looking at the greater picture and say, right, I bought it for 270. I held it for 3 years. It's essentially doubled its money. So well
Amazing.
done, first of all. But then this last part is an interesting one. Leaning towards waiting till January when the home buyers grant opens up and may add more competition to the market. So Sam's saying, I bought it for 270. It's now worth 550. I've doubled in 3 years, but I'm actually going to wait because I think I can get 600 for it come January.
Yeah.
You may be right, Sam, but you may be wrong.
Yeah, and if you've got a goal in January to, buy your own occupied or maybe to pay down your own occupied mortgage, that might fit your goal and you might capitalise on that.
Yeah, it may. However, this scenario just sprung into my mind. If Sam's wanting to use that cash for another investment and he wants to do that in January, right, or February or March or April, right, he could be robbing Peter to pay Paul.
100%. And paying a bit of tax on the way.
And paying tax on the way. So, yeah, it needs to be – you need to look at your whole situation in its entirety, Sam, and say, well, what's my number one reason for selling this? Is it just the cyclical nature of the market that I'm in? Just because I've doubled my money doesn't mean that it's not going to continue to grow. It's looking at affordability in the area. It's looking at suburbs around. It's looking at the existing – dwelling that you've got. Do I need to spend money on it in future years? Like, yeah, sure, you've got maybe 10 years of growth in 3, fair to say, historically. If property doubles every 10 to 12 years, Sam's got this in 3. So there is a strong argument, and it's enticing to say, well, I can take all this money off the table. But what are we doing next?
Yep.
Becky Ann says, we're buying our PPOR in Sydney. Well done. That's a mean feat in itself. Torn between a 3-bedroom apartment with lower repayments or a townhouse at our max limit. We want to make the best long-term choice. What are your thoughts, Rachel?
Oh, it's about what you're comfortable with. So when it's your own home and you're talking about your max limit, is that the max limit of what you're comfortable paying back a week, or is that the max limit of what the banks are saying that you can afford?
Yeah.
Because they're different things.
They are.
So I think my advice would be to actually work out what you're comfortable with paying back a week. Don't look at what the bank will lend you. Look at what your budget says. If you're going to the max limit of your budget, well, then you might invest in a more quality asset. But if you're looking at the max limit of what the bank will lend you, I would say it's a very rare that you would be comfortable there.
So you're thinking more about the cash flows, say, well, at our max limit in our life, are we still okay to go out for dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let's look at it in addition to that as an asset. 3-bedroom apartment, complex of, I don't know, let's make it up, 40 or 50 versus a townhouse in a complex of 6 or 8.
Yeah.
Same 3 bedrooms, might even be same internal size, but it's probably not. It's probably bigger. It's probably 2-story in the same suburb, potentially. Let's say it is. As an asset, which one are we looking at?
Well, the townhouse is going to have more capital growth historically than an apartment.
Yeah. What does Becky Ann want? Well, does she want to live in a complex, or does she want her more of that independence, not have to fend with 50 others in the building, be able to share a driveway but just have her own essentially? Because a lot of the townhouses are a Torrens title as well, meaning they own their own land essentially. So, yeah, I think combine those two together, Becky Ann, we'd say, well, okay, cash flow, what is your max limit? Yeah. As you said, is it the bank's or is it yours? What are you comfortable with on your repayments? And you've taken into account your buffers in your life, your interest rates, your all these things, combined with, apartment versus townhouse. Because I meet so many people that said to me, if I only spent an extra $40,000 here, what difference that would have made in terms of growth over the last 10, 15 years.
And how many people do buy one and then have to move to upsize, and then agents' fees, and then you've got stamp duty.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if your income is set to increase, that might really answer that question for you too.
It could, yeah. You say, well, okay, I can handle this for the next 12 months to 2 years, and then my wage increase is coming, so I'm on Easy Street or Easier Street. Conversely, it could be, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to have kids in 2 years.
Yeah.
So what do I do now?
Yeah.
So, again, that sort of 5-year, 10-year thinking as much as we can. But I like the fact that we're looking at 3-bed versus 3 or 4-bed.
Yep.
Right? Because it's not apples for apples. It's sort of apples versus oranges maybe. We're saying, well, if we're – don't know your situation, by the way, but if we're – planning on having a child or already have one and we want to have another one, there's 2 adults, 2 kids maybe, we can handle a 3-bed. But if we're thinking 2-bedroom unit or apartment versus 3-bedroom townhouse, that's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah. Good luck, Becky. David asks, best locations rurally to buy an investment property right now for $450,000 to $700,000.
So, David, that is a really wild question, isn't it?
It's a big range too.
It's a massive range. 450 to 700. We've got, when you, and I'm sure David's done this, across Australia, if you just put in Australia as a search criteria on realestate.com or domain, and you put in a filter that says 450 to 700K, and you might say, right, I need 2 bedrooms minimum, 3 bedrooms, and you might have a land size minimum that's, I don't know, 500 square, you're going to get thousands of options. And then you click on the, I'm visualising myself doing this. I click on the map on the right-hand side up the top, and the map has all these dots scattered everywhere around the country.
Yeah.
And your brain goes into phase to say, well, or haze, should I say, to say, where the hell do I start? And that's what I'm saying here. We need to eliminate as many as we can before we even get to that stage of jumping on realestate.com.
Yeah.
So your situation is the most important for your investing, David. So what do you do? What do you want to do in the future? Why are you buying this property? What's the cash flow requirements? What sort of deposit have you got? Like you would say 700K real estate's better than 450K real estate.
A lot more choice.
A lot more choice, but also a better asset. It's that price for a reason, isn't it? So can I handle the yield on a 700K property? Because if I can, I'm probably going there versus buying something at 450. I would look at populated centres and say, right, how many larger populated centres fit in this criteria?
Yep.
Or do I want to buy a unit in that 450 to 700K price?
Well, he did say rurally, so I'm thinking he's looking more house and land. I don't know if he's thinking about a unit rurally.
Who knows? Who knows? We haven't got much to work with here. But yeah, I think, well, if I can buy something in a 50,000 populated centre for that sort of brief versus something that's got 5,000 in it.
So 50,000 is your magic number?
No, I wouldn't say that. But and I've said it before on the show and everywhere else. If I Google the top 100 cities by population, I think at this price point, you can find something in the top 30 or 40.
Okay.
So why go to number 98?
Yep.
It's going to be a cheaper product in a more of a volatile area with less diverse economy, less population growth generally.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't know. What do you think?
I think that's a big range and you would have a lot of choice.
I think we need to sort of bring it in a bit tighter, David, and say what's my yield need to be and what assets generally grow the best, and what I want for this property long term. Like you could be on 50 grand a year and need a cash flow property. You could be on 300 a year and need some negative gearing, or you might want capital growth out of this. So you might have the mindset or the risk profile that says I'm keen to subdivide or add some real value to it structurally or cosmetically. Like my mind just goes everywhere right now.
David's booking in for a clarity call.
I don't know, but there's a lot of scenarios going on here that I'm just spitballing with him. So, in any case, good question though. Very common one.
This is Property is brought to you by Sphere Home Loans. Sphere Home Loans is a mortgage broker that helps our listeners all around Australia. So, if you want to get into your first home sooner, looking at upgrading, an additional property, or want your current mortgage reviewed, just search Sphere Home Loans or click the link in the show notes, and their dedicated brokers will be able to help you wherever you are. If you are, however, after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to moneypodcast.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. That's moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help.
Bianca says, hey guys, I know buying a new PPOR with 100% equity plus costs is not the best financial decision, but we are toying with the idea of doing this and utilising our saved deposit to add value, pool and a facelift, and then getting the property revalued to try to manage the LVR. Is this a reasonable decision, or should we just try and put the money towards our deposit? Bianca, if you're buying a new PPOR and borrowing 100%, I'm guessing that you're using another property for equity, or you're using a parental guarantee, because it says, I don't know if buying a new PPOR with 100% equity, generally it's not possible unless there's another property propping it up.
Yes.
But also, if you've got another property, I'm just assuming that you do, if you've got an investment property you're using or another property that you're using as equity to enable that, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad financial decision to borrow 100%. If you've got the ability to do that, if you want to put those funds straight back into the property and add more value. What do you think, John?
Yeah, it's a really good question that you raise about the other property that we're getting equity from. And again, really common one. I feel that these questions are real cookie cutter questions that need to be answered all at the same time.
Yeah.
So we've got an investment property over here. We've clearly got some equity that says I can draw that out and that's our deposit for our owner-occupier.
Yeah.
Potentially, plus stamps. But I've also got some cash over here that I've saved up well. I could put that down as a deposit, but I want to save it to build a pool.
Yeah.
And do a facelift. So there's two parts to that. How's this investment property over here performing? How long are we going to hold that? Could we sell that to then put more cash down on our owner-occupier, because that's the bad debt, as we said earlier, and then draw the equity back out as good debt to go and buy another investment property? Then we've got the good debt, bad debt ratio in a better position or better order. Don't know, because I don't know what the investment property looks like, but that's one thing that I would look at. And we say never sell, but that might be an instance when we do sell, because sometimes we dig our toes in and say, well, we're never selling. But it may mean economical sense to do that, because our running costs in our life on our new PPR are really stretched now because we've borrowed so much money on this new property. Whether we put the cash deposit down or we keep the cash for the pool is really neither here nor there, is it? Like, we're spending the money anywhere, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we're looking in 12 months' time, we've spent it on the pool and the facelift without taking on further debt, or we've put down a deposit using our cash and then we've borrowed extra funds for the pool.
Yeah.
Either way is the same, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing that Bianca could be saying is that she's got, if there isn't another property, it would have to be a parental guarantee, because the only other way to not put your cash in would be something has to prop it up, so you can borrow, because you can only borrow a certain percentage against the property.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got parents that are allowing you to do that too, I don't know if they would be happy with you not putting your savings in, so that's another conversation.
Yeah, I just when she uses the word equity, it's got to be an investment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, or an owner-occupier now that she's upgrading.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know, one or the other. But, yeah, this last part, Rach, I'd love to get your thoughts. Getting the property revalued to try and manage the LVR, what purpose does that serve?
Well, I'm guessing if you're borrowing, let's say you're borrowing 95% or 90%, you might have a higher rate. Mm-hmm. And it might be that you were getting it revalued after you do these renovations to reduce that.
Yeah.
Which is really common.
And you could get your LMI back or something like that.
You can't get your LMI back once you've paid it. That's a one-off fee.
Not even in the first 12 months? Banks don't do that?
No.
Damn. Well, that's a good thought. So you reval and you're on a better rate.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So just don't overcommit too much on the pool or the facelift though.
Yeah, no.
And get ourselves into too much debt where we can we can't manage the repayments too well. All right, good one. Padmaker. Paddy, with all the recent changes in homebuyer incentives and rate cuts, what should first-time investors be thinking about when weighing up short-term buying opportunities versus sticking to a long-term strategy, especially in a dynamic market like Melbourne?
Oh, good question.
What do you think?
I think this is in your wheelhouse. This is right up your alley.
Well, yeah, I think the rains are coming, aren't they? Like the heavens are going to open up once maybe January comes. January is a bit of a first homeowner grant change that's going to be definitely gives first homeowners more incentive to get into the market if they're not already doing it. Personally, I wouldn't be waiting till January if I was sitting here right now because we still could see some awesome growth in this time. I think if we're a first-time investor, we should be looking. We've got to understand why we're investing in the first place. So if you interviewed 100 wannabe investors and they say, I want to be a property investor, why are they doing it? Is it because they love the look of property or jumping on realestate.com? No, it's because they want to make some money.
Yeah.
So I think we've always got to look long-term. We've got to look long-term at the process and the strategy for us. So an example of not doing that is holding out and trying to time the market, or paying $5,000 too much than I'd really like to because I only think this property's worth that now.
Yeah.
But I have to pay $5,000 more because I've got another competitor ready to pay that. So they're those short-term thoughts that can often cloud our long-term plan as a real estate investor.
Do you think it would change your opinion on whether, so Padmaker's saying, should I be looking at options that maybe aren't long-term? Should I be maybe buying something now and offloading it in January? So he's thinking about, is there some short-term gains to be made?
Yeah, okay. So if we did something ridiculous like that, as in buy now and sell in January or February when all the first homeowners are come rushing, we're less than 12 months, so we're paying full capital gains on any of the profits, and we're paying stamp duty, especially if it's in Melbourne where the stamp duty is a bit higher, as an investment, and we've got a little bit of land tax that we're paying. We're not going to make a soul.
Yeah.
We're not going to make any money at all. Maybe we're thinking, and hard to read between the lines, but okay, a Melbourne market, and depending on the particular market or the asset type, but Melbourne is a market where we can actually see value for money there right now when you compare it to a Sydney. So, but we've got low yields down there traditionally. So we're saying, okay, I'm buying this property now. It's got low yields on it. It means I'm going to have to pour money into it early days to hold the property. So I've got to play the long game to actually allow that to play out. Because if I try and sell it in the first 12 months or 2 years, I might actually end up losing money.
Yeah, it might change my strategy if I was buying in that area right now and I predicted that things were going to change in January. If I was planning on buying in 2 properties and I was going to do one now, wait for it to go up a bit in value and then pivot and buy a second, I may be more inclined to buy the 2 now.
Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had the ability to do it, even if it meant going a bit higher in LVR.
Yeah, okay. I would probably be the same. But what if you're a first home buyer and you're waiting in January for those grants?
Oh, that would be sad.
So you're waiting around till January or you're buying now?
If I had the ability to buy 2, I'd do it now. If I was an investor and I'm thinking,
Yes.
If I had the ability, that would be a change to my strategy where, your normal strategy might be buying 1 and then pivoting and buying 2 down the track. I might be inclined to buy the 2 knowing that what might happen, but not to sell them.
No.
Just to be able to realise the gains.
Yeah, so you're still having a long-term approach.
Yeah.
You're just making a short-term decision change. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And that's probably the things that people are looking at the moment. And we're seeing it on the ground at the moment now. Extremely low stock, a lot of buyers hovering around. So what's that do? That ultimately pushes prices up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Emily, rising contributor, Emily, on the Facebook group. Are sellers' agents as useful as buyers' agents? Now, I'm excited for this response because Rach was on a full rant off air before we got to this question. It's like, what the hell is this? So first of all, what is it? Seller's agent. Now, I'm saying that Emily is saying there are seller's agents out there that – so let's not confuse seller's agents with real estate agents. So on the selling side, you employ a real estate agent to sell your property.
Yes.
But we're also, in 2025, we're employing a seller's agent who will recruit the real estate agent to sell your house, and you'll pay them a fee.
This blows my mind.
On the other side, we've got buyer's agents that work purely for the buyer to buy property from a seller because they know that the real estate agent works for the seller. So they just want someone on their side. So the buyer's agent thing makes sense. But you're saying the seller's agent thing does not make sense.
Well, I remember when buyer's agents started to come into the market, and to me it made sense. It made sense because a real estate agent, and this is something that not everybody knew back then, a real estate agent is only paid for by the seller and is legally bound to act in the best interest of the seller. So it made perfect sense for a buyer's agent to come into the market because real estate agents, they might be lovely to buyers, but they're not working on their behalf.
Yeah.
They are working for the seller. So a buyer's agent made sense to me when it actually entered the market. It sort of emerged and it was new. But I don't understand this. If this is a seller, if this seller's agent becomes a thing, I don't understand what their purpose is when the real estate agent is legally bound to act on the behalf of the seller.
Yes.
So what are they doing? They're recruiting sellers' agents. This has just blown my mind.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a thing because it's happening out there, and it is quite common where an actual firm will be buyer's agents if you want them to be, and sellers' agents if you want them to be, and primarily in Sydney and Melbourne.
Okay, but the seller's agent is. Are they getting another real estate agent to sell the property, or are they selling the property?
No, they're not selling the property. They're working on behalf of the seller's agent is there to recruit the best agent out there for the job of selling the property. They're not the real estate agent as such, no.
I will spend my afternoon Googling this.
So you raised that point of, well, the sellers, the real estate agent is getting paid by the seller. Yeah. Mortgage broker is getting paid by the bank.
True.
But you're working for the client.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that says, well, there's two sides of it here, and we've got the sellers. Now, would I get a seller's agent on board to sell to try and interview 12 agents in my area? No. But some people might say, well, it's a big world out there. I've never sold a property. Would I engage someone to do that work on my behalf and for me to pay them a fee when I'm working 100 hours a week and have 8 kids and everything else?
And then I might get a seller's agent to go and interview the seller's agents that I'll choose. Like, when would that stop?
Yes. Well, yeah. Again, you've just got to have trust in the person that you've recommended, I suppose.
Yeah.
So Emily says, are seller's agents as useful as buyer's agents? Well, if you ask Rachel.
I'm sorry, Emily, until 5 minutes ago, I did not know what a seller's agent was, so I can only apologise. I can't answer that question.
Yeah. So you haven't come across them in your dealings with clients? Yeah.
No. But I am being educated in real time.
Yes, you are on the job. Yeah. As I said, I wouldn't use one personally, and I don't believe they are as useful. As you said, if they were selling the property for you, different story.
Yep.
But from what I've seen, these people are simply just negotiating who the selling agent's going to be.
Yeah, now I've sold a lot of property, and in that time, my expectation is with that 2 or 3% that I'm paying the real estate agent,
Yeah.
that they will do all of those things. They should be an excellent negotiator. They should be an excellent marketer.
Yep.
And they should tell me and help me stage my property. If they can't do those things,
Yes.
they do not deserve that enormous fee that we pay them when we sell our home.
I agree. I totally agree. However, all agents are not created equal.
Yeah.
And what they say at the front end might not be
Yes,
what
okay.
the back end ends up being.
Yeah.
So that's where the value is. Right, I know these 10 agents. And I
Yes.
know who's good, bad and otherwise.
Okay.
And I'll do all that for you and surmise it and say, yeah, this is, I think, who you should be using. I don't know.
Evolving.
Yeah, look, the world's evolving, Rachel. There's no doubt about
I
that.
know.
Yeah.
Amy asks, can self-funded retirees still get a mortgage if they're looking to get a PPOR or an IP? If so, what kind of lending criteria do they need to meet?
This is you.
This is me. Amy, yes, they can. You can buy if you're a self-funded retiree. However, there's still the same rules that need to be met, like with any other lending criteria, which is you need to have sufficient equity and you need to have sufficient income. Now, if you're a self-funded retiree, your income might be a mix of property and shares. And the bank, that would still go into the bank's calculator. It would be shaded and you would still need to show, especially if it was for a PPOR, that your exit strategy. So it does get a little bit more complicated when you're a self-funded retiree, but the answer isn't no. It's just you need to meet the guidelines and some banks do that better than others.
That's a very good assessment for Amy. So where there's a will, there's a way. Is that what you're saying?
There is.
And that's the mindset piece, isn't it? To know that you can knock the door down. Because I think at that age, self-funded retirees, let's call it in their 60s, there is maybe a thought process, and depending on who you talk to and who you have on your team, as to, well, I'm too old to be going to do that.
Yeah, and it might be part of their strategy that they are actually really well invested in super. They're getting a really good return from that and they don't want to mess with those funds, but they want to be able to do some things out of super, like buy a new home. It just has to be, generally for a self-funded retiree, a lot of the time it's their financial planner that's saying, go and get a mortgage for this because we've got this going on over here.
Yeah.
And the answer is it's not a straight no. So you just need to look at whether you fit the guidelines.
I'm just surmising here, but I think this will be a big part of the future in the next 5 years.
Okay, why is that?
Well, the way I see real estate playing out in Australia is, let's say Amy's now 65 and Amy has 2 kids that are 35.
Mm-hmm.
Those 35-year-old kids are living somewhere where they can't afford to live.
Yes.
So Amy's, as a mother, says, I'm going to buy these 2 kids a house, but it's going to be my name for now, or it might be in a trust or some sort of structure that allows them to have some ownership on it and allow them on the property ladder going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think we've got to think strategically now because we're in a different field or a different world than we were 20 years ago.
Yeah, we are.
So, great question. All right, I think that's pretty much a wrap. So, hey, if you're a content consumer of ours or a consumer contenting our content, we're on YouTube. So, as you see it, we are getting videoed right now. Don't look. All right, so if you need or want to jump onto YouTube and hit the subscribe button, that would be awesome. You get to see it in another light. Hopefully it's a good light. If you're happy with what we're doing, feel free to give us a 5-starry or send it on to a friend or a family member. That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing all those questions, everyone.
They're unbelievable questions. I really enjoyed those, as I do with all of them. But, yeah, they're really pertinent questions for what we're really dealing with in the landscape of real estate at the minute, isn't it? All right, that's a wrap. Until next time, take care.
Any information given in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and you should seek your own property advice before acting on anything you may hear in this podcast. If you want to start or advance your property education journey, John Pidgeon's book, Sort Your Property Out and Build Your Future, is available where all good books are sold, or via the link in the podcast show notes. Opinions or comments from any guests on the podcast are theirs and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective license holders.